1, 2. Simkin. Who hates Simkin? She hates Simkin. He hates Simkin. I hate Simkin. You hate Simkin. She hates Simkin. We hate Simkin. Who hates Simkin? I hate Simkin. They hate Simkin.
Hello, cruel world out there. This is Jonathan Simkin from 604 Records. The podcast is called I Hate Simkin. I'll explain to my guests in a second why it's called that. But basically, it's me sitting around talking with other old fucks from the Canadian music business. It tends to focus on the Canadian music business in the 90s and early 2000s. And I'm stoked to have an old friend here today, a guy who's done a hell of a lot of things in the music business, Mr. Brian Hetherman.
Mr. Simkin, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's great to see you too. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. So this is interesting because we've had a chance to talk for, 15, 20 minutes, but this is really the first conversation we've had in
it's been a while.
Yeah.
Certainly since probably before COVID.
So who knows? Maybe there's going to be some, hidden resentments to come out. I don't know. Anything
I hope so. Let's make it interesting.
If you want to unload on me, now would be a good time. Did I inadvertently offend you?
Let me warm up for a second.
Okay. Yeah. Do what you got to do. So, the reason this is called the I Hate Simkin podcast is Mike Kruger from Nickelback. I actually have to thank / blame for this. Back in the day when the MuchMusic Video Awards meant something, remember that?
I remember that.
Remember that was like the biggest deal, and
it was. I never spent Father's Day with my children all through the 90s and 2000s.
Was it always on Father's Day?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean that's not true. I did, but it would be Father's Day dinner, then right down to the MuchMusic Video Awards every year.
I wonder if that was Moses Namer's way of, maybe he's got some anti-dad bias.
Maybe. Or
maybe his dad.
Maybe he should do a podcast. My kids hate me. Or something.
Yeah. Well, that would be. It's like every time the MuchMusic Video Awards happen, it's like, Dad, I can't see you on Father's Day. I have other obligations. Yeah. So, but that was the biggest deal. I mean, that show, I mean, not only was it like the ratings through the roof, but, to get that look for an artist on that show was massive. And like anybody in the business knows, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to do with award shows is about the most brutal, nasty kind of part of this business in some ways, at least for me. I never enjoyed that part of it. It just seemed like it was always so political and, people just being so horrible to each other behind the scenes. But when the camera goes on, everybody loves everybody.
Everybody's smiling.
Yes. Okay.
And congratulatory.
Congratulatory. Exactly. But Nickelback, for their heyday, played it every year. Like I think they played it 5 years in a row.
Right.
And Mike Kruger every year would wear a shirt that says, I hate Simkin.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. That's great.
For no reason. I don't think he hates me. I've been the band's lawyer for 30 years. Yeah. I think we're on good terms. But
it's pretty funny though.
But it's funny. Yeah. And I liked it. But, there was more to it too when naming the podcast. It's because I guess I had been sort of obsessing over the fact that, it's like, I always wonder, like, why am I such a polarizing figure in the music business in Canada? And like, I always have been. Do you agree with that?
I would say so. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And it's just, this isn't a podcast about me. Yeah. It's just a jump off point for sort of talking about how people are in the business. Yeah. But I always found it interesting because I don't know. I don't feel like I'm I don't feel like I'm.
No, I think it's probably, I've known you most of that, if not all that 30 years. So, I think you're honest. Some might say to a fault, but that would depend on what you're being honest about, I guess, right?
It's a funny business that way, isn't it? And I say that to people sometimes because like I get that sometimes from like if we're going to sign bands or something and I have a meeting with the band or like I'll be trying to, one of my project managers will be trying to sign a band and like the band really wants to meet with you before they, sign the contract. And I'm like, oh boy, I already know what question's coming. And every time it's the same. Why are people afraid of you? If I know, I don't know why. So, but I think you're probably right. Like, I think it's not a business where necessarily being honest all the time is,
Yeah, I guess you probably don't shy away from controversy or an issue. So
I do a little bit now.
Well, okay, but
didn't used to.
Maybe there was a few things that set that about, but anyway, I think it's like,
Remember I had that Twitter thing that
I know. Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny. I mean, on some levels, it's like really not a big deal it was over in 3 days, it's like all over like most things these days. It's like you get your head stomped for 3 days and then everybody moves on. In fact,
somebody else does something else.
I was going to say, in a weird kind of way, I have to thank Jacob Hogard because I think he was arrested 3 days after.
Yeah, well, that'll immediately take the heat off you, right?
It took the heat off me.
That's a big one. So,
well, making a joke online that gets misinterpreted and then you have to apologize. I'll take that any day over sexually assaulting someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Jail time is not the way to
go. But yeah, I was trying to think like you and I have, my first memory of you is when you were at Universal Canada.
Yeah.
You were A&R.
That's correct.
And the things I remember you being involved with Age of Electric. Mm-hmm. So did you sign them?
Yeah.
And who else did you have on your A&R roster?
Well, it's funny. Most of the bands were actually Vancouver-based bands. It was our dear friend Holly.
Holly McNarland.
Obviously Limb Lifter, an offshoot from Age of Electric. Soul Decision was probably one of my bigger signings, right? That pop band from Vancouver.
Originally Indecision. Because I was their lawyer for about 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
When they were indecision.
There you go.
But then they were not indecisive about not wanting me as their lawyer. That day maybe that was the soul decision.
Maybe they had a soul searching decision. So
God.
So, yeah.
Wow, soul decision. Okay, we have to unwrap all of these. So Age of Electric, what an interesting band. Are you still in touch with any of those guys?
Most of them, if not all of them.
Yeah, I'm still pals with Ryan. I was just emailing with him. In fact, I asked him to do this podcast and he was scared.
Well, maybe when the new Limb Lifter record comes out, he'll be all over it.
Yeah, that's right. To promote.
It's all timing.
But I ended up doing the Mounties, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I kept in touch with him for that reason.
Yeah.
And, I work with Hot Heat. And of course, he's besties with, and I love those guys. And then I ended up sort of lawyering when Age of Electric imploded.
Yeah, I
kind of was brought in to help sort of clean up a little bit of the mess. The funny thing is, I don't remember on whose side was I hired by Todd, and I can't remember now, but because they went. What did they become? They became a different band,
Static and Stereo, which was that was actually kind of when Age of Electric imploded, and Limb Lifter was already in play, but just became more in play. And Todd and John and their brother, I can't remember.
There's another brother?
Ryan Kearns.
Why don't I know that?
Well, I guess, he really, the only band he was in that, really sort of got signed and
was Static and Stereo. Did you sign Static and Stereo?
Yeah. I mean, it was more of an extension of the Age deal, right? Because, we'd already had a side deal with Limb Lifter, and then the Static and Stereo situation kind of grew out of because it was interesting. The Age of Electric period was interesting because the band had been around for 10 plus years already, which is always the challenge when you get into a situation like this. The band had already traced back and forth the country 1,000 times, had already spent years together. And they were literally poised to just blow up. I mean, it was going to be that time period of all those bands in the 90s, like I'm Mother Earth and Tea Party, that sort of blew up. And they were really just seconds away. I think their last show was, they did a bunch of dates with Bush, the old Gavin Rossdale band.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of dates with Our Lady Peace. And it was sort of that last Our Lady Peace show where it kind of imploded. And so there was so much momentum on Age of Electric that it was just natural to, even if it wasn't going to be the Age of Electric situation.
That EP that had Enya, was that recorded with you guys or was that before you guys? It was recorded
before us, but we put it out. Actually, what happened was Randy, myself, and a few other people had instigated this cargo relationship with MCA. And it was right around the time that I started doing A&R. And it allowed us in a more easy way, get bands on the roster without going through the elaborateness of signing them and advances in money. They could retain the ownership of the master. We would upstream key cargo releases. So we would pick and choose from their releases, plus bring stuff over and put it on there.
Wow.
And that's how Age of Electric.
I haven't heard the name Cargo in a good God. So just to fill in people who are curious. So Cargo is an independent distributor in Canada. Were they based in Montreal? I know they had an office here because Ken Beatty was the office here, who's now a publicist.
Yeah.
They were a big player. Like,
it was huge. I mean, probably certainly at least a handful of the bands that I signed in the early days would probably not have happened if it wasn't for Cargo. My very first signing was another Vancouver band. She Stole My Beer.
Is that Sukyin Lee?
No. It's sort of like a...
Oh, I remember that band.
Yeah,
I always used to get her. What was the band she was in? She had a similar name. Yeah. I remember Stole My Beer. Yeah.
So I had literally been doing A&R for a few months, and I went to the Horseshoe Tavern, and there was literally like a lineup around the block. And I was like, what the hell is this, right? I'd actually never heard of the band, having not, up to that point, not spent that much time out here. And, it was sort of an underground thing, really. It was like people were in the know, but if you weren't in the know, you didn't know who they were. And so I was like, okay, I got to go see what this is. You never see, you see the Horseshoe full, but you rarely ever see a lineup down the block.
Yep.
And at least you didn't at that point. And I went in and, it's interesting because it was, I don't think it was what people were expecting. They thought I was going to sign a rock band or something like that. And this was more of a roots sort of rock, kind of like, Counting Crows or Wallflowers. That was really at that height of those bands they had already made the record and just released it a few weeks earlier independently. So we grabbed it and put it through the Cargo scenario, but upstreamed it. And it sort of became the first thing I signed at MCA Universal.
And where are they now?
I actually had lunch with the singer yesterday.
Here?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We've been friends all this time.
That's nice. In this business, that's rare. It's rare that people...
They still play. They don't play often because they're all,
old.
They're older. Yeah. And they all
have kids
and stuff like that. But they still, if they play the Rickshaw or some Garibaldi lift company in Whistler. They don't do, touring that much.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I don't really know this about you, but like, what were you doing before Universal? Like, were you in a band? Like, I know so many people in the business, they end up, they're musicians and it doesn't work out. So they're like, well, I love music so much. I still want to be involved. I'm going to become an entertainment lawyer or start a label. Was it that kind of thing? Were you in a band?
Sort of. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. And when I got out of high school, I decided that I would do the Second City thing. And I took a bunch of Second City courses, but I just was like, my joke was always, I wanted to start at the top and work my way down.
Yes.
It's like, I didn't really want to do it the other way. So I got really discouraged by it. I was like, I did improv in school and plays and things and used to make movies when I was a kid. And it just wasn't the same. It was like, okay, pretend you're a tree blowing in the wind and that kind of right. So it's just
we're into that.
Not into that at all. So my second choice actually was music.
Yep.
So I think at the time after I finished, I got a job. It's funny. I got a job at a computer company, which was sort of before personal computers, right? But it was a huge entry point. Completely unqualified in every way, shape, and form to be working at a computer company. Yeah. But I got the gig and it was in computer parts. And, truthfully, if I'd stayed in there, I'd probably be a multimillionaire now. But, I don't know how long I lasted, but I just was like, quit one day. Great job. Just up and left one day. I think I was like late 17, early 18 or something like that. And came home and told my parents, who were furious, and went and got a job in a record store and started DJing.
Which record store?
I think I started, it was A&A Records.
I remember A&A on Yonge Street.
No, it was, what the hell was it? It was a mall, like Parkway Plaza or something.
Oh, funny.
A mall near my
Where'd you grow up?
In East York in Toronto.
Okay, gotcha.
But it was like in Scarborough or something.
Gotcha.
I had a great story about that, but I don't know if I can tell it.
Tell it, man. That's what this is about. Let's hear it.
So my first experience in the music business, getting treated like certainly not my last. And so it would have been, mid to late 80s. And the manager, it was that time when Madonna was huge, and she used to dress like Madonna. Like she had that like a virgin time period.
The
Like
manager of the store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like initially just part-time, and, I'd work on Saturdays and work evenings and that kind of stuff. And then I started going to school, like music school.
Yeah.
And, so one day she didn't like me because I was like a rock dude, right? It was like I was the antithesis of what she was into.
Yes.
And so one day I came in, like whatever day that I was supposed to come in, she was like, "Where were you on Saturday?" And I was like, "What do you mean, where was I on Saturday?" And she's like, you didn't show up for your shift. I said, "But I wasn't scheduled for the shift, right?" And she's like, "You're fired. Like, get out." And I was like heartbroken, right? I was just still a kid, right? So anyway, fast forward my career, I go into, I worked at Duke Street Records. I did radio promotion, sales, marketing.
Sorry, if it's a story, keep going. I'm going to come back to Duke Street, but keep going.
But so many years later, in my promo days, I used to work with like Slash and Guns N' Roses and Peter Gabriel and all those. Tragically Hip, I was a big part of working with those guys back in the day.
Yeah.
But Slash was, he was great, actually. He was amazing. So it was the Guns N' Roses and Slash's Snake Pit time period when he, the band kind of broke up and he did his own thing. But then also with Guns N' Roses. And he was kind of the guy that he would always send to town to do press and promo because Axl really wouldn't be very talkative or didn't want to do it. And so Slash's big thing was he loved the Brass Rail, which is a strip bar. I mean, he lived at the Brass Rail. So when he would come to town, that was part of my gig, was to take him there. So we're at the Brass Rail one night and, I'm paying for his whatever he's doing. And, of course, all the strippers are swarming around Slash. And there's this one that just keeps like being really chatty with me. And I'm thinking, this girl's a genius because she's trying to get to Slash through me.
Yes. Right? Yes.
And she's like, "Oh, you want to dance? You want to dance or whatever?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. Thanks. I'm okay. I'm okay." She's like, Come on. So I'll dance for you free or whatever. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Right. So this was of course the 90s. This was not last week. So we're clear. Just to clear up. Yes. Yeah. And so she's dancing away. And then it just struck me. It was the girl from the record store. I had a feeling that's where this was going. Fired me. And I was like, what are the chances? Like, how many years later would that have been? Like 10, 15? At least. Yeah. At least. Yeah. Probably 15 years later. Right. And so I just said to her, I said, "You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to have to fire you." She was just like, what? And she never got the joke. Of course, I didn't explain it. She didn't recognize you. It didn't matter to me. It was more important than I got the last laugh. Yes, exactly. It's funny. I actually have one Brass Rail story. And I'm not a strip guy. I mean, I'm a heterosexual male. I love women. I'm happily married, et cetera, but was never into the stripper thing. And it's funny because one of my best friends as a child, and I'm still good friends with, owns the Penthouse here. Right. So we used to go there on Sundays. We'd go, like when we were in elementary school, we'd go to a movie and it was closed on Sundays. So we'd all go to the Penthouse on a Sunday and like swing around the stripper pole. And, it was fun. It was fun. But I never really got it. Like, listen, you sit there, you watch naked women, you get worked up, and then what do you do? Like, I never understood what's the point of I never understood why bands were so infatuated. Like, that's the thing that was always weird for me, is that all these guys who were in rock bands who probably could, in those days, certainly do whatever they wanted to do, right? They didn't have trouble finding women or whatever the case may be. It always amazed me how, when I think of how many bands we used to like be like, take us here, take us there. We've heard this is I think it was because it was a little different. Toronto was a little more loose with the regulations maybe or something. I don't know. But it would be the times that I would have to take bands, that would be their first request. Brass Rail or the equivalent. Yeah. Funny. Well, to me, it was like, okay, like
I was at a birthday party once where there was a male stripper. It was a woman's birthday party and there was a male stripper. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
that wasn't me, by the way.
No, it wasn't you. No. The women are all excited and they're having a gas and they're screaming and they're running up and slipping money and like they're having a lot of fun. Yeah. That's not the vibe, but when it's a bunch of dudes looking at like new, it's more like a pack of lions looking at a gazelle.
It's creepy.
It feels something menacing about it. But when, and this will involve some people so I was Matthew Goodband's lawyer, and remember Frank Weipert?
Of course I remember Frank.
Good old Frank. Now, there's a character. Exactly. There's somebody I should get on this podcast.
Well, it's funny. I just had lunch with Art Bergman too.
Wow.
Because that's when I started my career at Duke Street. Art was one of the first artists.
When you said Duke Street, because I was Art's lawyer.
Oh, there you go.
But post Duke Street, I did his deal with Sony.
Okay.
But wasn't that funny? Yeah. That's so Matt Good fired Frank. Right. Frank was his early manager, and poor Frank. I mean, he had such a good ear and always discovered bands, and then always got fired when just before things blew up. Yeah. But lovely guy. I mean, really a lovely guy. And so he got fired, and it's like, and that was before the Universal merger with Polygram. So Matt was still technically A&M.
That's right. Yeah.
And so John Reed, who was the president of A&M,
and Dave was the A&R guy.
Dave Porter.
Yeah.
So was the A&R guy. So they're like a bit of a crisis mode. Like he's fired his manager right in the middle of the first album. And they're like, Simkin, we'd really love you to come out with Matt and Dave Genn and interview managers. Like we think it would be good if you would be there and I said, fine, no problem. And I intro managed Matt. Right. In fact, I technically was his manager during Apparitions, which was his moment of blowing up in Canada, but not taking credit for it, Matt, if you're listening. I'm just saying I happened to be the guy at that moment. But they flew us out, and we met with all these managers. We met with Jake Gold. Oh boy, I'll never do I want to talk about that? Here's Simkin thinking about his life and whether he's going to get sued. Well, I can tell this story because it's not really that bad. That was, I remember we flew into Toronto. So it's me, Dave, and Matt Good. We flew into Toronto, and we went directly to Jake's house. We was like, we're late for this. I think our flight was late. So and he was living in Cabbagetown at the time.
No, he's living in Riverdale.
Or is that what it was? Right. Yeah. So we,
he used to live near me at that time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we get in a cab and we get out there, and, he was explaining to us how it worked in, what were they called? Management Trust? Is that what's called? He was explaining. It's like, well, part of it is we would be your publisher. And I hadn't been around very long as an entertainment lawyer at that point, but something stunk to me about that. And I was asking some questions like, well, hold on a sec. You're telling me that if he signs for you with management, he's also got to sign to you for publishing? And he said, yeah, I mean, you got a problem with that? I said, well, I don't know. It feels a little like, do we have to do that? And I'll never forget what he said. It's so Jay Gold. Listen, if you want to drive a Chevy, you can drive a Chevy. That's fine. But if you want to drive a Cadillac, you have to pay for a Cadillac. And I remember we all looked at each other like, okay, bye. It's nice meeting you. But we ended up signing with Ray Daniels.
That's right.
And Steve late departed Steve Hoffman, who was also, like, I've had a lot of issues with Ray over the years, as have most people who deal with him. But should I say that? Maybe I shouldn't say that. I'll speak for myself only. I certainly didn't love a lot of things about how he conducted his business. But that was literally the day we shook hands and said, okay, we're going to be here. Mm-hmm. They take me out to the brass rail. It's me and Matt and Steve, and I don't think Ray was there, and a bunch of other people. And I think I must have been visibly uncomfortable because very quickly the joke started about, what, you don't like women, Simkin? What? It's like, oh God. And those made me do a lap dance. They actually, all of a sudden this woman comes along and said, okay, let's go. I said, what do you, I said, no, I'm not interested. Oh, it's paid for. I was like, I'm not interested. and they're all like Simpkins. And so I ended up having to, then having to explain it to my wife. It's just like, oh God, it was just too much. But God, there's so many things you've mentioned. So Duke Street, who was that dude who owned that?
Andy Rant.
And whatever happened to, because he had some interesting acts. Yeah. Did he also have the Rio Statics maybe?
No, he had Jane Siberry.
Oh, Jane Siberry.
Chuck Circle, Scott Merritt, Art, obviously. Trying to think who else was on the roster. Inoue 4 out of Edmonton.
Interesting. And is he still, whatever happened?
No, I think he's retired. I mean, he, the business kind of wound down. That's how he ended up at MCA. Sort of.
What was your job at Duke Street?
Sort of marketing, retail and marketing. And, I was just a kid. I got that job. It was like incredible. I was like blown away. It was amazing. I went from working in record stores and DJing in clubs to, working at a record company.
Art was the first client I ever had who I was kind of starstruck by. Like, I remember very, very early in my career, I think Dave Genn maybe hooked me up with him. And
Dave used to play in
his band. Yeah. He just did when Art played here like
the rickshaw
2 months ago. Yeah. But, and I've been such a fan. That was the first, now I'm at the point in my life where I couldn't give a it's just like, I've met everybody now and it's fine. It's, but I just judge them on who they are. And, as you know, in this business, in many ways, it's not that different from the rest of civilization. Some stars are and some stars are wonderful people, and just like every other segment of the world.
Exactly.
But I was so starstruck. I had seen Art play a lot in Vancouver. I had been a fan since Young Canadians, and I couldn't believe I was repping the guy. It was the first time. Yeah. I remember I think Art was using pretty heavily at that point.
Probably, yeah.
And so it was a little difficult to have conversations with him, but I remember the very first time he came to my office, my old office on Hastings, and here I am blubbering away. Oh, I can't believe I'm such a big fan. And I could just see him going, oh God, I think he wanted to be anywhere but having this young idiot lawyer.
That's so funny.
But, and it's funny, I sort of reconnected with him recently on Twitter of all places.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Just, I know when he got the Order of Canada, I was very vocal to say, thank you for getting it right, Canada.
Yeah, this is it, right?
You almost never hear stories like that. Really, but he's one of those guys who everybody who was a fan started a band.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was going to say a similar thing.
Yeah. So I'm glad he's still around, and I'm glad he's still performing, and he's an important artist in Canada. But okay, so you're at Duke Street, and then you go to Universal.
Sort of get melded into Universal, and was doing really just like, again, retail, like I kind of stepped down a little bit into more of a regional retail marketing.
Had the merger already happened at that?
No. This was just, Duke Street had changed their deal with MCA. At that point, they had a full staff, including me, who served all the purposes. And then they just changed their deal, and it became
Universal did everything.
Yeah.
And which meant Universal did nothing. Okay. It's just a little joke, Randy.
It's okay. He's not there anymore anyway.
So no, I guess that's true.
And so I just kind of went along with the merger, I guess, in a way. Randy just came to me and sidebarred me and was like, we really want to bring you over here. And
is there ever going to be, there's never going to be another time in this business like that. Close. Man, those early days at Universal were gas.
Not even close, man.
It's funny. I can remember coming like the first few times I'd visit Toronto, and I didn't have a record label then. I was just me as the lawyer of various bands or on the label or manager at a certain point. And man, it was such a hustling, bustling. You'd walk in there and there was action everywhere and there were people. Yep. And then towards the end of that company's existence, it was a graveyard.
Yeah. I don't, the last few years, I left in 2001. So I missed out on all that sort of strange.
It was pretty depressing.
Yeah.
It was pretty depressing. I remember being in there towards the end, and a lot of the offices were just being used to store.
Yeah.
And I walked in and there was this giant Matthew Good, not even a plaque. It was like a promo painting almost, which is now sitting in our lounge.
Oh, wow. That's
I remember saying it would have been probably Sarah Norris, or maybe it was Kristen Burke. I remember somebody who was there. Yeah. Can I take this? Or take it. Like it was bedlam. Like there was, it was just stuff lying all over the place. Like it was a bad scene, but we had most of my label's biggest successes were in the Randy Lennox regime.
Yeah.
You know, so, okay, Age of Electric and Limb Lifter. And then names, Holly, we should talk about it. So Holly McNarland, for people who don't know, is a Canadian singer. Maybe the most purely talented singer I have ever worked with. What a voice. Oh my God, what a voice. And so seemingly effortless with her, like just to be able to, and I was her next door neighbor for a number of years.
For many years. I forgot about that.
And so, you know, she had her first kid, like we used to babysit, like we were close, and I managed her for a while.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what to say about Holly. Like, one of the most intense people I've ever worked with, and a beautiful woman, but also very male in many of her, like she could hang with the guys better than most guys could hang with the guys. She drink most people under the table.
Yeah, that's fair.
And had other proclivities, which I won't even get into on this podcast. And unfortunately it didn't end great with her and I. It didn't end horrible, but I mean, you know, I don't know. She went through a lot of managers and went through a lot of stuff.
Including me.
When did you manage her?
After you.
After me? Yeah. God damn. And David Ehrlich was before me.
Yeah, before you.
And the funny thing is, he emailed me yesterday.
Oh, that's bizarre.
I haven't heard from the guy in 20 years.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Something to do with Dale Penner.
Yeah.
And Nickelback royalties. It doesn't matter for him.
Right.
But it was just funny. Yeah. So, okay. So, wow. Yeah. I managed her during Beautiful Blue, like that.
Well, I managed her like sort of the tail end of that. But I signed her in 96. Right. And it was a co-venture with Universal in New York. I'd come out to Vancouver for Music West or whatever it was called at that time. It was Music West or
Music West.
And someone had said, go see this girl at the St. Regis Hotel. And I went, and like you'd aptly describe, it was just like, I think she was probably like 17 or 18. Actually, it's funny. The hair on the back of my neck is just actually going up because I'm talking about it. It's like, that's what it was, right? It was just like, whoa, like this small woman, like very young, but a voice, like forget it, and a presence, and just blew me away. So we ended up signing her in Canada with a co-venture out of the US.
And she won the Juno for the best new artist.
Big record. That was a big platinum record.
What was the hit? Numb?
Numb, and then Elmo.
Wow. And you're still in touch with her?
Yeah. I just was over at her place for her birthday.
And how is she?
She's great. Good? You know, she's she runs a coffee shop now, her and her husband, in Toronto. And
oh God, I'm going to absolutely drop in unexpectedly next time. Which part of town?
It's in the west end of town.
Let's give her a plug. Give her a plug.
I can't remember the name will come to me.
Okay, all good. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Because at that time she was married to Jay.
That's right.
Who disappeared off the face of the planet. Yeah. I understand, but isn't that funny? Yeah. And she's still singing.
Yeah, I think not really for a career. I mean, you know, so I jumped on managing at the Beautiful Blue, or just after you, right after you. And I was at Radio Star Maker Fund. I'd run that and set that up. And then I just felt like I wanted to get back. Like I'd had enough time away from it that I realized I missed it. And I was at the time when you guys had parted ways, and I guess at that point she asked me to manage her, and then, you know, I ended up signing her to my label. Of course, we had our ups and downs. Her and I had our ups and downs as well too. So.
She's a hard person. Like, and I'm not. This is not going to turn into a slag because I don't feel any negative feelings towards her, to be honest. But you know, she was a difficult person to manage, but that was also part of the reason I liked her. Like, it was the same things that made her difficult were the same things that I really liked about her. Yeah. And
she never took any, you know, she wasn't one for glad handing, which the music business is, you know, king at, you know.
Boy, she could swear like a soldier. Boy, oh boy. Like,
she wouldn't play the game the way, you know, everybody certainly the way those senior guys anticipated she would play the game, or expected to play the game.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you mentioned Star Maker. You've done a lot. I actually wrote a little because I was looking at your sort of resume, so to speak, and I've known most of this about you, but like you've worked with a lot of those sorts of like, and it's funny because I almost it's the kind of stuff that in a million years I can't do. Well,
it's not fun. I'll tell you.
Yeah, but you obviously have more of an ability to work with others than I do, because that's not like, I can't be part of anything. I get asked all the time to be on this board, to be on that. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's not, when I say I can't work with people, it's not, there's a Yiddish term, spilchus and the tuchus, which means pins in your ass. Like I'm very antsy and very impatient.
Right.
And I can't do things like committees and subcommittees and or Zoom calls that last for 4 hours, board meetings. It's not in me. It would make me lose my mind. But you obviously you're able to,
I guess. I don't know.
I mean, without wanting to kill others or yourself.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that's necessarily true.
But you did. I mean,
I haven't killed anybody yet.
You were. What were you? Were you the head of Factor?
Yeah.
What? And when was that? Was that after Heather Ostertag?
Yeah.
Well,
it was sort of. It's complicated. I mean, I was actually on the board of Factor, and I guess a bunch of people decided that they had trying to come up with a succession plan for Heather at the time, because she'd been there for 30 years or something like
also
that.
Also a polarizing character in the music business.
That's for sure. The stories.
Yes.
So I don't know, the board and her and some other people got it in their minds that I should be the new head of Factor. So it happened. Let's just say that. And
was that when it was in that weird building that was still up sort of north? And
not in the north, but north of downtown.
There was a mall right there.
Industrial complex. Like,
kind of.
I remember all the land around it was like polluted, like it was all vacant land.
It was strange. And then it was this building that was like an island to itself, this sort of weird building.
So it was an interesting time. Their succession plan was that I was supposed to be there for 2 years under her tutelage, and then I would take over. And then it just, at some point, without getting into the gory details, at some point it just imploded, and she was gone. And then I was made the head for the next year and a half or so.
Like the experience? Not like it?
It was interesting.
I mean, you had to deal with government people. You had to deal with it was the industry people. You know
what I learned about giving away money?
What?
And I've obviously done it a few times in my career, is that it's not the people who don't get money you have to worry about. It's the people who don't think they got enough. Those are the worst.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm friendly with Meg Simsick. I've known her forever. And I don't envy that job. Like it's constantly, it's what you just said. It's like, it's
minefields. It's like little baby minefields everywhere.
And like, it's funny because 604 tends to get the most money, which I always feel mildly, I have a I don't know, I guess complicated relationship with funding in Canada, because on the one hand, it's been huge for our label. I owe the government a lot for that, and I appreciate it and I'm grateful for it. Yet on the other hand, I see the negative side of how it impacts the business, I think, because boy, there's a lot of people who think they're entitled to free money. And I always say to my CFO, like, we can't have a business model where if the funding's gone, our company goes down. Yeah. That's not a business model. That's just like you need to actually be able to sustain yourself as a business without funding, or else what kind of a business are you even in? Yeah. And
although I will add that the difference is, and you've obviously proven this wrong, but it's, the difference is that in Canada, the market is so small, and it's changed now because you can exist in the rest of the world with not too many other people's help. But back in the, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you couldn't. I mean, you needed a conduit by which to get to the rest of the world.
Right.
And so I think the theory and why that started was without some funding, especially when records were $100,000 to make, who would spend $100,000 making a record? You would never make it back, probably,
Nope.
right?
It's funny though, because that brings up a million different things. I mean, I think it's interesting to me that if you really look at the last 25 years in the business, 30 years, indie labels have done a better job of getting their artists into the other parts of the world.
Absolutely.
And I think part of this is that you would think that, hey, if you're signed to Universal Canada, it's no brainer that you're going to, in fact, quite the contrary. Yeah. You almost were looked at like, oh, the Canadians signed that artist. Like,
well, and also if that team in the US or whatever their territory isn't into the artist, then you don't have anywhere else to go. Right. Whereas if it's me or you doing what we do, like finding bands and signing them, it's like, I'll talk to 1,000 people to find out who's the most interested in the band before I do a deal with them. Right?
Well, that's right. And for me, even once the label existed, I still had the mindset of that lawyer who was just shopping deals. So like, I don't know who, example, Carly Rae Jepsen, like, if she had been signed to Universal, I wonder if any of that stuff, Universal Canada, right. I wonder if any of that stuff would have happened. But once, I signed her here, then I was just doing like I used to do as a lawyer, contacting all these guys I know all over, I mean, she almost got signed on the first record to Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Because I sent it to Jason Jordan. Do you know Jason? Yeah. I sent it to Jason. He's like, hey, she's great. And, and he couldn't convince his boss, But it's funny. I mean, it's really funny because a lot of bands think that if they sign to like the major label in Canada, that's going to be the beginning of and the Soul Decision thing was interesting because as I recall, that was done differently. Universal actually themselves put it out, like Universal Canada.
Well, it was funny because it was the time prior to signing the band. I guess at the same time, but prior to signing the band, I was also running MCA Music Publishing. And so I worked really closely with Jay Boberg, who it was formerly had run and started IRS.
Yes.
So I had a really great relationship with not only with Jay, but all of his A&R team. And they actually put out a few records for me over the years, or for us in MCA. And so we had the Indecision guys had already started making a record, started to send their songs to radio, and we're kind of bubbling under. I saw it. I mean, my thing has always been, I can't sign something I can't stand behind. And, the boy band craze was rapid at that point. And, these guys wrote their own songs, and played their own instruments and, played on the records. And I mean, Trevor, still, he probably had one of the biggest hits of his career with the Armin van Buuren.
Right.
So I was like, I can get behind this. I mean, this is maybe not something I'm going to throw on in my living room and dance around, but this is good. These songs are good.
You're not embarrassed to be rapping.
100%. No, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we signed the band and anyway, we started momentum to move forward, and the idea was to get a partner in the US, and Jay Boberg happened to be up for something in our offices. And it was funny because in our mind, I don't know what we'd spent on making the record, but I call it $80,000 or something making the record. And in our mind, it was done. Right. And Jay came up and he sat in the boardroom and we played him like 3 songs. And he was like, those are some of the best demos I've ever heard. And it was
but they weren't demos.
They weren't demos.
No.
And he's like, this band is great. Like, let's talk more about this. And within a matter of weeks, we had a co-venture with MCA in America.
Oh, it was a co-venture. For some reason, in my mind, Universal Canada was paying for everything, even in the States. Like I thought they were paying for
it could have been for half of it or whatever. They were probably paying for half of it, right? And
what was that song that did so well?
Ooh, it's kind of, I can see the video. Faded was the big one.
I can see the video in my mind. Yeah. That's interesting.
And so that was at least a gold record in America. Like that was, but as happens, I think, there's a lot of things that were going on. There was a merger. I left after the first record to go to Star Maker. So, when you lose your A&R guy, and I mean, they did one more record, I think, for MCA. I don't even know if MCA actually put it out. I think they gave it back to the band, and the band put it out.
God, this business is brutal.
And the climate could have changed at that point. It was no longer pop music. It was whatever was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, what an unforgiving business this is in so many ways. God,
Exactly.
these bands who have these big moments. I've always said that. I almost think it's worse to have one hit than to have none at all.
Yeah.
Because then you get a taste of what that's like. And then all of a sudden
It's gone.
Yeah. And I've worked with some very famous,
People write you off. I mean, if you don't have an immediate follow-up success, you're done. Right. There's no coming. It's very hard to come back around. People do it, but it's very hard to come back
Well,
around.
I mean, I worked closely with Len.
Yeah.
Steal My Sunshine was the number 3 most played song in the world.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
And they just could never.
Yeah.
And Mark's still in the business and Mark's still doing stuff. And I mean, it's a lot of diss on him, but it's like, boy, it's heartbreaking when that sort of happens, you just don't know. I don't know what sort of where to go from there.
It's weird.
And then you also like, man, when I was looking at your stuff, like there's some stuff I don't even remember. Like what's Mega Music?
Oh, Mega Music was this thing. So after I left Factor, a couple guys that I used to work with at MCA, they had come up with this idea where it was, when downloads were still a thing, right?
Yeah.
And the idea was radio stations would do do giveaways. So basically we would pre-sell these downloads to the radio stations and they would give out these cards and people could go, but they could go and download whatever music they want. So it's like an Apple card, but an independent company of Apple I can't remember what my title was, but they brought me on as like,
whose company was it?
It was a guy named Terry and Tim out of Alberta, but they were former MCA guys who.
See, that sounds like right when everything sort of imploded and it was, that funny part of the business where like, it's post Napster, but pre-streaming, which was really like a very dark sort of period in the business. And there was all these funny, like all these ideas came up in that period.
Well, it was very successful.
Is that what that was? Like sort of?
Well, sort of. But the other angle on this was that it allowed, radio stations have to spend a certain amount of money to promote Canadian talent. And they have these loose funds that they're allowed to do only certain things with.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was a way that money songs would get promoted and sold. And the radio stations use that money to prepay for the music and give it away to consumers for free. So it was kind of fighting against Napster a little bit, but trying to work within the parameters of Apple and all that stuff without kind of flying in the face of them. And so for a brief period of time before, streaming and everything kind of went sideways with that, it was a really successful venture because, we sold hundreds of thousands of songs. Sold the songs. And so bands made money, labels made money, and fans got all this free music. And it didn't limit what songs. I mean, it was Canadian, but you could pick the Nickelback or you could pick whatever. Right? It didn't matter. The newest band that just fell off the wagon, yesterday. So anything in between. So,
Interesting. I remember at that time too, there was, Keith Porteous.
Yeah.
Keith, this was post, I guess, BMG for him. And, he approached me with this guy and they had to sing tune cards.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? Like, it's the same kind of thing where in that period, which was really kind of a dumb idea. But I mean, people were so freaked out at that point about like what the hell's happening in this business that, there were all these sort of, and then streaming kind of,
eliminated everything. Yeah.
It's interesting too. Like streaming has changed. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but we were the only label at Universal that didn't give up digital rights.
Me too.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It was only you and I.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And I mean, Randy didn't like it.
Of course not.
But, I negotiated that first deal in 2001. Yeah. Nickelback was the biggest band on the planet.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted our label. Mm-hmm. And, I had a gut feeling because digital didn't mean in 2001 what it means now.
No.
But I just, like, for me,
it really wasn't a table talk. Like, there was no discussion for the most part with anybody.
Absolutely right. And I mean, I think like people, like I spoke at the BCCMAs a couple of weeks ago. I never do like that, but we have one of my employees is on the board and, please, could I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. If that helps you out, I'm happy to do that. And somebody said to me like, what are the factors do you think that, the key factors to your success? And I was like, OCD, which is actually kind of true and sad, but there's a reason I'm in my office till 4 a.m. every night, because I have really bad OCD and I can't leave unless every single email I got has been, when you start to get, that's one thing when you get 50 emails a day, when you get 400, suddenly,
it takes a bit longer.
It takes a bit longer. And, but also the fact that I didn't come from the music business, because like I fell into it by accident. I didn't even take copyright law school. And so my take on the business has never been like, well, that's just how it's done. Like that's the standard way. If something seems stupid to me, and maybe this goes back to why do some people in the business look at me as a troublemaker? I mean, to me, it's just about common sense. And the thing with Randy and digital was very much a common sense thing. It wasn't me making a stand or like, I remember saying to Randy in that negotiation, like, listen, I'll happily pay you to do things for me I can't do for myself.
Right.
But I know how to use iTunes Producer.
Yeah.
I know how to upload why would I? And I remember him being like, well, we'll be able to get you more like, better placement on the site. And I was kind of like, you know what, dude, for 20 points or whatever it is they were looking for, I'll take my chances. Yeah. I and of course.
Well, and back in those days, I mean, that was, it became very, very quickly some substantial income. If I had not done that and I had to rely on, when I got paid out on my sales from distribution, I probably wouldn't still be in business 22 years later.
And I remember when we came time for the renegotiation, and that's almost exactly what I said. I said, you know what? Here's the difference between you guys and Apple.
Yeah.
I said, with Apple, I get a statement and payment
30 days later
every month.
Yeah.
And I look at the statement and it makes sense. Like I actually understand it.
But I get one from you.
I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what it means. I'm a lawyer and I can't decipher any of this.
Yeah.
So the further it went along, the more I was convinced I had made. And I remember being at the Junos in, I don't know, maybe Calgary. It was a long time ago. And the head of business affairs then was Sarah Scott. You know Sarah?
Yeah.
I mean, we got to a screaming match at the Universal party, like the digital's got, and that's why I ultimately left, because when Remedios came in, he pretty much said, you either have to give us
or go
digital or off. And I said, this is me off. Good night. So it just never made sense to me, like just from a pure common sense sort of perspective. But it is funny, like streaming has changed. I mean, stating the obvious here, streaming has changed the business so much, but in ways I wasn't really expecting, as well as some that I was. So like example, like Theory of a Dead Man. So first band we ever signed, did great. Band's done, still around, still touring, still doing great.
Yeah.
They did all their records with us. They got through the entire deal. We owned 6 albums, Theory of a Dead Man. Yeah. And then they decided to go for the big money, and they did a big, and you know what? God bless them. I was disappointed. I would have liked them to stay, but I understood. Yeah. I mean, those guys got kids and stuff. You deserve to go get your big payday. I wasn't going to begrudge them for that. But here's what I wasn't expecting. We make so much more money off of them when they're not on the label.
Yeah.
And the reason is kind of obvious. When it's a touring band like they are, and they still tour their asses off. Yeah. When they go out on a tour, like when you and I were kids and we were music fans, like I'm so old. I went to the Fleetwood Mac Rumors tour. Wow. That's how old I am. Wow. Now, granted, I was very young and I was but I was a fan, and I owned some of the previous records. Right. I owned the self-titled one with Rhiannon, and I owned the one before that. Yeah. And so when they came to town, they were touring Rumors, like the way bands used to tour. We're touring in support of this album. I rushed out and bought the album. I didn't go back and rebuy the albums I already owned. What would have been the point of that? Yeah. Well, now nobody buys physical. And when Theory of a Dead Man goes on tour, the entire catalog, boom, they go on tour, and I'm not spending money anymore. Yep. Like if I really wanted to make money, I'd stop signing bands and just work with 20 years of catalog, which luckily I've kept relatively unencumbered. Yeah. So I didn't really think that part of it through, but it's funny now too, because like, sometimes when you have to make that difficult decision about, are we going to keep a band or are we going to dump a band? I must admit, I'm probably more inclined these days to dump bands because, in the old days, you'd be like, well, what if I dump them and then they have the biggest hit of their career? Right. With streaming, that would actually be okay with me. Yeah.
Because I mean, if they have a bigger track, it's just, especially with the algorithms, it's like people go right back to the old catalog and rediscover stuff they didn't know or stuff they forgot. And
I kind of love the business. I mean, I know a lot of people complain about it, or at least some people do. I mean, mostly major labels do, but I kind of like it now. Like it's funny, isn't it? Because when you and I started, everybody did things kind of the same. You would make an album, often a very expensive album.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't just do a single, you would do the entire album.
Yep.
You'd pick a single, you'd make a video. Again, often ridiculously expensive. Made a little more sense in that context because the music business was such a billions of dollars of everybody was buying CDs, and it seemed like there'd never be an end to it.
$16, $17 for a CD. So
hard to believe, isn't it?
Easier to recoup.
So hard to believe that was how it was, but that's how it was. And like, I remember the first 2 or 3 music videos we made, we spent like, I think on that first Theory of a Dead Man video, $100,000. Because if you wanted to get one of those 5 directors who seemed to be monopolizing MuchMusic, you had to pay, what they would pay. Isn't it funny now? It's
hard to find a music director or a video director.
Well, the music video thing's interesting too. Like that's its own conversation because it's like, you had all these guys like Kyle Davison,
right,
who did all those amazing Marianas Trench videos. Right. I can't remember all these guys now, but that Michael Maxis or, all these guys who were the big, like 5 or 6 big. Yeah. And when the Napster happened and suddenly the budgets all went down, they all were like, we're out. We're doing commercials now. Yeah, exactly. And then this new breed rose up, and it was like Colin Minahan and Emma Higgins, and like these people who were happy to do a video for $25,000. Yep. But then, of course, the bar kept going down because
then MuchFact Video Fact was gone, and then it was like no grant system.
MuchFact, Jesus, I haven't even thought about that. Yeah. See, that to me, we were talking earlier about like, the downside of Canadian funding. That to me was the epitome of what I hated about Canadian funding, because I don't know, if you weren't from Toronto, it seemed like the odds of getting a MuchFact grant were kind of zero. But what bothered me the most, I remember I used to give them a bad time about it, be like, there are some people who don't even have a marketing plan, and you're giving them money for a video. Their whole plan is a free video. That's it. That's the extent of their...
The government regulations were such that they needed to be diverse. I mean, at that point, diverse didn't necessarily mean what diverse means now, but diverse genre-wise, so you had to make sure the, folk band from Halifax or the whatever band from wherever got some funding as well. And initially it was to ensure that they had enough content. I mean, when MuchMusic launched, there was barely enough music videos to keep it going.
Right.
And that's what kept it going for the first 10 probably years. Right. Well, then once they had tons of content and, people were making their own videos, it became less of an issue. And that's when they still had the same amount of money they had to spend. So it became, okay, well, let's give that guy a chance. And you know what? In fairness, I mean, sure, there was a lot of videos that never saw the light of day on MuchMusic, but there was still those bands that came like Moist or, bands that made a cool, unique video and it took the airways by storm,
Marianas Trench was largely broken on MuchMusic. Yeah. I mean, we made that first album and we were very confident, and we went to rock radio, funny enough. And rock radio was like, that's too pop. And so we very quickly changed. You better go to pop. And the pop radio was like, it's too rock. If it wasn't for MuchMusic,
radio never would have played it.
And we wouldn't have had that audience that we ended up. I mean, that video for Shake Tramp, which got nominated for a Juno that year.
Well, and that band's audience is still, I mean, they've grown. I guess the audience at that point was like, 14, 15-year-old girls probably.
Who are still fans to this day.
But now they're 30 or whatever they are, right? And they're still follow the band and,
It's pretty wild. We're doing a new album, which,
maybe they're bringing their kids.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I mean, it's funny that band in particular, if somebody had to say to me, like, what's the quintessential, like, 604 band? It's Marianas, because that band changed how we market music. Like that band, we completely revised how we did everything because of that. Because that first album, when it didn't work at radio, it really forced us to go like, what are we going to do? And we really focused on touring. We got them a condo in Toronto and basically said, stay there, meet bands, tour. And I think I bought them a video camera because they were so adept at not just music videos, but like
capturing
funny clips. Yeah. They understood social media long before most bands did. And I mean, I'm talking MySpace at the time. Like in a lot of ways, Marianas broke on MySpace.
Bizarre.
Which is crazy,
Oh.
you know? So, no, it's pretty funny. And what else did I want to ask you about? I want to ask you, what are you doing now? Like, let's hear what you're, and if you want to plug anything or whatever.
Still running the, now it's 2 labels really. Curve Music is the sort of Americana roots country label, and Sonic Envy is the sort of rock pop.
And who are you working with?
Lowest of the Low now. Strangely, after we mentioned Frank Wiper. Yeah.
Wow.
So funny. I mean, knowing those guys since the beginning, right? Was a fan of that Shakespeare My Butt.
Me too.
It was like, man, that was my record, man, when that came out.
Yeah.
And so just ended up
one of the biggest selling independent records in Canadian history.
Absolutely.
I think the only one that was above that was Gordon by Bare Naked Ladies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I've got the catalog as well. So I've got all the band's catalog plus a brand new record we just put out in October.
Wow. I did not know that.
It's a really great synergy.
Do you know my link to that band?
No.
Oh, it's weird. One of the first gigs I ever had as an entertainment lawyer was LSD Records.
Oh, right.
Which was Bruce Levins and Roger Levins, who owned Greenhouse Studios here.
Well, yeah, because we used to make records out there. Yeah.
Well, that's right. So they signed Lowest of the Low, which was a big deal at the time.
Oh, right.
It was a
Hallucigenia record, right? The follow-up. Right.
Which
and they made the record there, didn't they?
Here, yeah, they made it in Little Mountain Sound, right in Vancouver. Right. But things turned bad real quick. And before the album even came out, the label and the artists were. Yeah. And it was me who, I mean, literally, this was my first gig.
Took it over to A&M?
Well, no, but it was like my first gig as A&M was the distributor.
Okay. Right.
We did the distribution deal with Alan Reed.
Right.
We make this record and everybody's all excited and then something goes horribly wrong. I can't remember what it was, but between the label and the band. And all of a sudden I have to negotiate an out. And who's their lawyer? Graham Henderson.
Oh.
And Graham was a hard ass and a good lawyer.
Before he worked for Universal.
Long before.
Yeah.
So he was just the man. Like he was the guy. And I'm not going to say I snookered him, but I did a good job, especially given how intimidated I was. I mean, I really didn't know what the I was doing.
Right.
And that is how I ended up working. So the long story short is we got them off the label. We did a deal with Universal or A&M to put out Hallucigenia. And my reputation, but Frank Weipert was the manager.
That's right.
And that's how I ended up working with Matthew Good.
Oh, that's wow.
He said, well, given what you've just done to Graham Henderson, I think I want you on my side. And I said, okay. And that's how I ended up working with Matthew Good.
Oh, man, but
funny. I love Lowest of the Low. Yeah. Hallucigenia, I think, didn't get its just desserts. I think it's a great record. Maybe not as consistent as Shakespeare My Butt. No. But the stuff that's good on there is as good or better than the stuff on Shakespeare. Like Black Monday's on there. Yeah. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
what a song.
Yeah. Still one of the most streamed songs of theirs.
Oh God. Like what a song. And I never understood why they didn't blow up off of that.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for Ron. And is it still the same?
Oh, it's basic. It's Ron and David. Steven left a few years ago, but they're all friends again. There's a documentary that's coming out officially very soon, produced by and directed by their sound man, Simon Head, who's been with the band for a long time. And Doc's great because they're really honest. Like they're so honest in the doc, which is rare. You know, you don't necessarily, people want to talk about their accomplishments, but they're not so open to talking about their mistakes, which, so it's a great doc. And yeah, I mean, it's just, the band is like, I mean, this record we just put out in October 6th, and it's by far their most successful record in 25 years for sure. Like the video alone is, like 350.
Are they going to tour or are they?
Yeah, they've toured mostly Ontario.
Are they coming out here?
I don't think so. We're trying to figure out a way to, somebody to play with out here that makes sense, Last time I saw Ron was playing here at the Commodore, and boy, that could be 5 years ago or it could be 10 years ago. Was it with 5440 or? It must have been. That must have been why I was there, because Dave must have got me backstage. I remember saying hi to Ron. And, it's funny. My wife's a redhead, and we have a joke about
why are there so many good looking redhead women and so few good looking redhead men? It's like when you're a redheaded male, it's like a curse. But we always say there's two exceptions to that: Ron Hawkins and Eric Stoltz.
There you go. That's pretty funny.
Well, Brian, honestly, thank you. This has been
Thank you, man. It's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Trip down
memory lane.
Yeah. Which boy, as you get older, it's just
well, at least we remembered 98% of what we were talking about.
Given how much pot I smoke, it's amazing. I remember, anything these days, but it's it's funny. I mean, I when I look back at that period, especially sort of mid 90s to sort of early 2000s, it's too bad people don't, try to document it more. What a fascinating time in the music business, and really unlike anything. And I didn't know when I started in the business that I was going to just happen to be doing it at a time when it was about to completely shift.
Yeah. Well, it both explode and then shortly thereafter shift.
Do you prefer the way it is now or the way it was when you were sort of first at Universal? Just as like a business model and...
I mean, we had some fun back then. You can't have that much fun anymore.
No.
So I miss that. Or maybe I don't. But.
Were you at the Universal, God, just this alone tells you what a change there's been. Universal used to have those retreats up in Gravenhurst or Deerhurst, which is the...
Well, they used to switch around, but there was one at Deerhurst, and then I can't remember the other one. There was the Rocky Crest Resort, and there's
I went to one so they would invite, so it was a retreat for their employees.
Yeah.
But they would also invite a couple of international acts and a couple of domestic acts
I saw some
who would
incredible
showcase.
acts. Yeah.
And I only went once, and it was with McNarland.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was there.
Okay, so the Will I Am's band was there.
Black Eyed Peas.
Black Eyed Peas were there.
Yeah.
Hoxie Workman.
Yeah. Would have been that time period for sure.
Was there. And I remember thinking, because I was just taking the out of Porter because, you guys were forced to do all these corporate retreat kind of, you're doing a tug of war and it was supposed to teach you about, better say to Porter, what a bunch of
I always hated shit like that. It's that team building thing, right?
The team building. I was just giving it to him.
I'm not a good team player. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. No, it was funny. But do you remember the significance of that weekend?
That was 9/11.
Sure was. Yeah. So, and I remember a few funny things from that weekend. I remember Default played.
Yeah.
And, I'm still pals with Dallas, and Dallas and I actually had a podcast all throughout the pandemic. Yeah. That's where I got hooked on doing podcasts.
Well, and you work with Dave.
I still work with Dave Benedict and Danny from the Default
Danny as well.
With their label Rock is Dead, to give them a little plug. And I saw Jeremy Hora not that long ago, who I, loved Jeremy. So, and that was a big experience for me because Default in a lot of ways was the precursor to 604 because Chad was
involved.
He would come off tour. This is before Nickelback was huge. They were starting, but, Chad would get off tour and everybody else would disappear into their domestic lives. But Chad's idea of vacation was, I'm going to go find a bunch of bands to produce. Right. And I was a lawyer. So, hey, man, I got this band. And so long story short is one of these bands was called Shock the Day. And as usual, nothing really happened. We papered it up and nothing happened. But Chad called me at some point. He's like, hey, buddy, remember Shock the Day? I'm like, yeah. So, well, they changed their name to Default and they got a new singer and apparently he's really good looking. You want to go check him out tonight at Studebaker's, which is a whole Alberta. It's like, yeah, sure. And they were so good. Yeah. And we got him a deal. We did a deal with them. Hey, if we get you right. I said, if we get you a deal, we get X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And we got him a deal. Like it was the first time Chad and I did something together outside of Nickelback that actually worked. Yeah. And that's in
that was very early days though, too.
Very early days, 2000. Yeah. And that's what got me the idea for 604. Cause I'm like, if we had done that slightly differently, we should have done a 4-record production deal with them. Then we wouldn't have been selling TVT 1 record. We would have been selling them 4 records.
Right.
Note to self. So when we found Theory of a Dead Man a year and a half later, Chad was like, hey, we should do like what we did with Default. I'm like, no.
This is what we should do.
And I incorporated the company that became 604.
Right.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it here. Thank you again, Brian. Really great to see you. And
it's been a pleasure.
Great to have a bit of a chat about the business.
I hate Simkin. You hate Simkin. She hates Simkin. Simkin. They hate Simkin.